My next Patreon question is from Hayden, who wants to know about a specific requirement for horror movies. Why can a horror movie still be great despite not being necessarily scary? A common criticism I often see when someone sees a horror movie they don't like is that it was not scary, which, fair enough, as when people walk into a horror film, the expectation might be that it will cause them to jump out of their seats with fright. A lot of people like to see horror movies for the thrill of it, and the sensation that comes from witnessing something truly horrific and frightening. Horror is one of the most consistently successful movie genres because of the adrenaline rush that can come from it. However, in my personal opinion, I'm not necessarily looking for scares when I see a horror film. Part of that comes from my age, as I just reached a point in my life where horror movies don't scare me anymore. But what they can be is unsettling. My favorite film from last year was A Quiet Place, a horror film about aliens who eat anything that makes a sound. Did I find the movie scary? Not really. So why did I love it so much? Because John Krasinski directed the movie in such a way where even the mere hint of noise was enough to instill worry that the aliens would come out and get our lead characters. Krasinski immediately established the stakes of this world, and most importantly, I cared about the family at the center of the story. Like any other film, for me to get invested in the story and where it's potentially heading, I have to be invested in the characters we're following. Sure, Jason Voorhees is an imposing force with a machete in the Friday the 13th series, but the people he tends to chase are often just generic teenagers that exist to be dispatched with until one of them has enough. They're not interesting or fleshed out enough beyond archetypes, so it's hard for me to care. I just see stock movie characters, not real people in genuine danger. Compare that to John Carpenter's Halloween, where Carpenter takes the time to let us truly get to know Laurie Strode and her friends. We're even given the necessary amount of information about Michael Myers, a longtime psychiatrist, and why he's so desperate to stop him. Halloween also works so brilliantly because there's something unnerving about a mysterious and shady figure slowly stalking us in the night. Films like A Quiet Place and Halloween rely more on suspense and our concerns for the leads to get us anxious, and I think that's more impressive than things like jump scares. Then you have horror that uses comedy to juxtapose the jolts they might give us. The recently released Ready or Not took its horror film premise and laced it with dark comedy. Scream famously played with the rules of the horror genre by having characters be self-aware, although Wes Craven still directed the movie like a traditional horror film, with its knife-wielding villain chasing after the heroes. There's even a scene where a supporting character is watching Halloween on television and warning Jamie Lee Curtis, all the while the killer is also behind him. Is Scream a scary film? No, but it's still an incredibly clever entry in the genre and one of my favorites. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining is another one of my favorite horror movies, as we see the effect the Overlook Hotel has on Jack Torrance and his descent into madness. Kubrick relied more on unexpected imagery and the psychological torment of this hotel to get under our skin rather than traditional horror film techniques. I don't think anyone today would refer to the classic Universal monster movies from decades ago as scary, but that does not stop Frankenstein and The Wolfman from being very well put together films that manage to hold up quite nicely to current standards. Now, this does not mean I've never seen a movie that truly scared me. I think The Exorcist remains a chilling film with the way William Friedkin shows us the slowly changing personality and appearance of young Regan as the devil takes her over. It was a more recent horror movie that really did scare me, partly thanks to my not being a fan of clowns. So this clown transforming to so many grotesque creations stayed with me for days. There were even scenes where he was just standing there with his red balloons, and I was thinking, no, get away from me, Pennywise, and you leave those children alone. But am I going to see It Chapter 2? Probably. I think scares are important, but not necessarily the top requirement for horror movies. Like any other genre, it's all about creating a solid story with good execution and compelling characters worth investing the time in, whether the movie has things that go bump in the night or not. Thank you for your question, Hayden.